Even as the Crius expedition bound for Acheron delved deep into the unexplored nebulas of Shiliri space, they began to come under attack. Fast raiding ships struck at the edges of their fleet, and mysterious warriors ambushed the scouting parties that the Crius set down on planets along their way. The Argent Flight, zealous guardians of the secrets of Ixth, refused to let the expedition press on. Honor-bound to the long-dead Lazax, these Shikrai warriors did everything in their power to prevent the Armada from reaching Ixth. But the die had been cast, and the Crius fleet was far too strong for the flight to stop. Eventually, after much struggle, the Crius came to a clutch of dead planets circling an ancient dwarf star. The system appeared entirely without note, but clues within the maps to Ixth made oblique references to such a place. Ghost scouts searched each planet in turn, and eventually they came to the innermost, a lonely world of dust and black oceans. The expedition's scholars consulted their research and agreed they had finally found Acheron. The Crius carefully swept Acheron with their most powerful sensors and dispatched exploratory probes to the surface. Soon, their persistence was rewarded. Buried beneath the depths of Acheron's deepest sea was the ruin of an ancient civilization that had been ancient even before the Lazax founded their empire. At the heart of that sunken ruin was a sealed gateway, an artificial wormhole, larger and more powerful than any other that the galaxy had ever seen. The Crius immediately set about trying to unlock the portal, pushing their formidable understanding of wormhole physics to its very limits. After much struggle, they succeeded. They opened the gateway and stepped through onto Ixth. They expected a paradise. They were wrong. Too late, the Crius discovered that the prophecies of Ixth had all been lies. Instead of a promised land, they discovered a tomb city on a dead planet far outside the galaxy. Instead of riches, they discovered horrors from a forgotten age. And instead of power, they awakened the cruel Mahact. For Ixth was the ancestral home of the gene-sorcerers. Driven from the galaxy by the Lazax, and unable to return through the now sealed Acheron Gate, the Mahact had entombed themselves on Ixth to await the day when someone would make the mistake of reopening the gate and awakening them. Those belonging to the Crius expedition were the gene-sorcerers' first victims. Their eldritch technology allowed the Mahact to remake the ghosts' ethereal forms, crafting them into loyal servants for their new masters. Of the entire expeditionary armada, only a few observers in a light cruiser were able to escape to warn the rest of the galaxy. Once awake, the Mahact were able to regain control of Acheron and the gate with ease. The gene-sorcerers worked frantically and with single-minded purpose to ensure they could never be isolated or exiled again, and they had little concern for the other consequences of their actions. So they unleashed the full force of their ancient machines, unbinding the wormhole from Acheron. Energy capable of maintaining the gateway until the stars burned away was unleashed in a moment, expanding its structure to swallow Ixth whole and hurl it to the midst of the galaxy's bright core stars. This drastic act destroyed the gateway. On Ixth, the mechanism simply vanished, lost among 100 dimensions of space and time, leaving only a glowing crater. On Acheron, the consequences were far worse. As the gate hurled Ixth into the center of the galaxy, it left a great, gaping wound in Acheron's heart and in the very fabric of the universe. Even as Acheron was rent apart, a rift deep in its molten core began to form. Through this rift came the Volwraith, a race of creatures from beyond the stars, beyond the galaxy, even beyond this universe. They resembled the demons that haunted many of the galaxy's oldest myths. Great beasts with malignant and terrible purpose. No two were alike, ranging in size from tiny creatures no larger than a finger to great, fleshy monstrosities as large as dreadnoughts. The Volwraith cabal quickly infested the twisted space around the bones of Acheron, and from there they gathered their forces and cast their covetous eyes upon the galaxy. In the confused wake of this disaster, the galaxy's network of data brokers began sharing stories of a wealthy individual who was hungry for information. Brokers rarely met with their new client in person, but the few who did claimed that they were a nondescript humanoid, wearing an environmental suit and merchant garb. They referred to themselves only as the Nomad, and seemed particularly interested in any information regarding the failed Creus expedition, and about the scattered rumors of the nightmare demons haunting Shiliri space. But most dismissed the Nomad as a harmless curiosity until Sumerian. Space Station Sumerian encircled the frost-bitten world of Arcturus. Though the ice-locked planet had few inhabitants, save for smugglers who hide caches of contraband on the surface, the massive station was one of the busiest independent trading ports in the galaxy. And in the course of only a few weeks, the Nomad took over Sumerian, seemingly by chance. A series of licenses, contracts, and deals ended and began at the perfect time to grant the Nomad control of the station's operations and most of its major factions. The few magnates and mercenary leaders who attempted to resist the takeover simply vanished. With the Nomad now in control of Sumerian, he began to expand its grasp over the surrounding systems. Many came to realize that this Nomad was at the center of a creeping web of influence and blackmail that stretched across the galaxy, as well as being the head of a formidable mercenary army. Further, they seemed to have an almost prescient ability to anticipate threats and defeat them. Whoever the Nomad was, they clearly were enacting a plan of mind-boggling scope and complexity, the final goals of which remain a mystery even now. Even as the Nomad's plans began to unfold, and the Volwraith flesh ships began pouring from Shiliri space, a single, golden ship appeared in orbit over Mechatol Rex. It descended to the Senate Processional in the heart of Mechatol City. The hatches opened, and 4 emissaries stepped out. Each was one of the observers that the Council had dispatched with the Creus expedition to Ixth. Now, they wore robes of gold and steel, and were flanked by hulking Creus legionnaires whose armor seethed with ominous crimson glow. They walked into the chambers of the Galactic Senate without fanfare or invitation. Before their stunned audience, they announced they were the emissaries of Vartar Arin Oblis, first among the galaxy's rightful race of rulers. They went on to say that as Oblis was a magnanimous ruler, all who surrendered immediately would be favored slaves. The council was silent, as the emissaries then turned exited the hall, and returned to their ship. A new chapter of galactic history had begun. The return of the Mahact kings spurred the rise of other races to prominence on the galactic stage. The fragile balance of power, forged between the traditional members of the Galactic Council, had been shattered with the resurgence of the Mahact. Now, others sought their chance to seize power for themselves. On many worlds, the titans of all began to rise from beneath the ground. Once slaves of the gene-sorcerers, millennia of slumber had freed the titans' minds from domination. Now, they began to strive to carve out a place for themselves in the galaxy. Meanwhile, black-hulled Empyrean ships were spotted with growing frequency, lurking on the edges of known systems. The mysterious Watcher race began to grow more active in galactic affairs, understanding the threat posed by a resurgent Mahact. Finally, the newly formed Nasroka Alliance looked at its peers with contempt. The Alliance believed it was time for a younger faction to chart the course of galactic affairs. And so, beset by new rivals and ancient threats, the elder races of the galaxy rushed to form alliances and to build up their military might. Now, as outposts and fortresses fall silent along borders, and night skies flicker with the light of distant battle, planets everywhere ready their defenses and prepare for war. Some believe a glorious new era is about to dawn, that a light might be forged that can resist the coming darkness, a glorious Imperium raised from the ashes of the old. But others know that old grudges run too deep to be healed so readily. They fear the galaxy is perched on the precipice of a titanic conflict, and that the return of the kings will send it all plunging into the abyss. But only time and war will tell.